Liam, Marco, and Sienna, 3 names that would become synonymous with fear and survival on the streets of Liverpool. By day they were ordinary residents, but by night they walked a dangerous line between loyalty and betrayal, caught in the ruthless war of gangs that ruled the city's shadows. Liverpool's streets during the day seem calm, almost peaceful. Tourists walk along the waterfront, and the city hums with ordinary life. But beneath this surface, the city holds a secret. When night falls, the familiar streets transform. Shadows stretch along brick walls, alleys, and abandoned buildings. Streetlights flicker, casting an eerie glow over the pavements. In certain neighborhoods, the calm is only an illusion. These are places where the streets belong not to the residents, but to gangs that rule the night with invisible hands. In Everton, Dockside, and some pockets of the Docklands, people move quickly, avoiding eye contact. Residents have learned to read the signs: a car parked too long, a group lingering on the corner, a sudden hush in the air. These signals warn that the gangs are watching, planning or acting. The gang's influence reaches everywhere, from small corner shops to local pubs and even to schools. No one is completely safe. Young people are often the first to be recruited, enticed by promises of respect, money, and power. Some see it as an escape from poverty. Others are drawn by curiosity or the thrill of rebellion. The night carries a particular tension, thick and almost tangible. Even the wind feels different, sharper, as it whistles past derelict buildings. Windows are shut tight, doors bolted, and curtains drawn. People whisper about incidents that happened the night before. Someone was beaten, a car torched, a shop vandalized. But the gangs operate in silence and strategy. Their members are careful, avoiding cameras, knowing where police patrols travel, and using the city's labyrinthine alleys to their advantage. For them, Liverpool is both a playground and a battlefield. The waterfront is deceptive. By day, it's lined with families, joggers, and the distant sound of ships. By night it becomes a place for clandestine deals. Crates of stolen goods, illegal shipments, and untold sums of cash change hands under the cover of darkness. Only those who belong to the gangs or those who work for them know which warehouses are safe and which are traps. The docks echo with footsteps, not of tourists, but of people whose lives are dictated by fear and loyalty. In these areas, survival requires constant vigilance. Every knock on a door, every shadow passing a window, could mean danger. Residents adapt, developing routines to stay safe. Some refuse to leave their homes after dark. Others risk the streets, careful to avoid the main gang territories. Yet even caution cannot guarantee safety. Random violence, turf wars, and drug-related disputes erupt without warning. The city holds countless secrets, stories hidden behind boarded-up doors and shuttered shops. And as night deepens, the streets seem to pulse with life unseen by most. A dangerous, electrifying energy that belongs entirely to the gangs who rule the night. Liverpool's night belongs to those who control its hidden corners, and among them, 2 gangs rise above all others. The Dockside Crew and the Mersey Wolves are names whispered in fear, respected by some, and cursed by many. Their influence stretches across the city, touching neighborhoods, docks, and even the nightlife district. Each group has carved out its territory, marking it with subtle signs only insiders understand. Graffiti on walls, a lone car parked in a specific spot, or even the way a streetlight flickers can signal which gang is in control. These are signals to outsiders to stay away, warnings wrapped in code, invisible to anyone not paying attention. The Dockside Crew operates primarily along the northern docks, using warehouses and abandoned storage units as their bases. Shipping kettons hide drugs, stolen electronics, and contraband goods, stacked like silent witnesses to the gang's power. They are precise and organized, their operations resembling a hidden machine, each member with a role that keeps the wheels turning. Some are lookouts, others transport goods, and a few manage the flow of cash. New recruits are tested immediately, sent to run errands that reveal their loyalty and intelligence. Failure is not an option. and betrayal is met with brutal consequences. Across the city, in Liverpool's nightlife districts, the Mersey Wolves dominate. Bars, clubs, and even small shops are under their subtle control. Protection money flows steadily into their hands, collected without fanfare, yet with unmistakable authority. They are unpredictable, sometimes violent, other times quietly strategic, making it nearly impossible for rivals or law enforcement to anticipate their moves. Rumors of their tactics spread quickly: ambushes in alleyways, staged accidents, or sudden disappearances of anyone who crosses them. These whispers are enough to keep their enemies cautious and their allies obedient. The tension between the two gangs is ever present. Turf disputes and minor skirmishes flare regularly, though both sides are careful not to draw too much attention. Yet behind the scenes, plans are constantly made, alliances are tested, and spies move like shadows between the groups. Even the most loyal members wonder who might betray them next. Liverpool's streets become a chessboard, each gang calculating moves, anticipating retaliation, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The city's residents are caught in the middle. Some refuse to speak, too afraid of the consequences. Others have lost friends or family to sudden violence, leaving neighborhoods scarred with memories and fear. The gang's influence shapes life in Liverpool quietly but unmistakably. Shops close early. Children are warned to avoid certain streets, and a sense of vigilance hangs over the city like fog. At night, the Dockside Crew and the Mersey Wolves watch, wait, and maneuver. Their presence is invisible yet undeniable, a shadowy power shaping everything it touches. In this hidden world, respect and fear are currency, and survival depends on understanding the rules or learning them too late. Liam had always known Liverpool as a city of contrast. By day, it was a place of bustling streets, shops, and laughter. By night, it transformed into something darker, a city where power and fear walked hand in hand. He was only 17 when he first felt the pull of the Dockside Crew. It started with small encounters. A group of older boys leaning against a brick wall, talking in low voices, their eyes sharp and calculating. Liam didn't realize it at the time, but every glance, every nod was a test, an invitation into a world where loyalty meant everything. The Dockside Crew did not recruit openly. Their methods were subtle, almost invisible to outsiders. They observed Liam for weeks, noting the way he carried himself, how he handled minor conflicts, and whether he had the courage to act when pressured. When the moment finally came, it wasn't dramatic. A simple task, delivered quietly, was enough to prove whether he could survive in their world. The package he was asked to carry was small, but the responsibility it represented was immense. He felt a surge of pride mingled with fear, a combination that would become familiar in the days ahead. Once inside, Liam discovered that the gang operated like a well-oiled machine. Every member had a role, and every action was calculated. The docks became a labyrinth of secret pathways, hidden rooms, and guarded warehouses. He learned the unspoken rules quickly: never speak too much, never ask questions, and always watch for signs of danger. The senior members were careful, their authority unquestioned, their presence both intimidating and protective. Liam observed the older boys and men, noting how effortlessly they commanded respect, how their movements were precise, how their eyes never left potential threats. Tasks for new recruits began small but escalated quickly. Liam was sent on late-night runs, delivering packages, watching over certain locations, and reporting back with every detail. Each night, the stakes rose higher. Mistakes were not tolerated, and punishment could be swift and severe. Yet there was also a strange sense of belonging. Liam felt accepted, recognized, and necessary, a feeling he had never experienced in school or at home. The adrenaline of each night became addictive, the danger thrilling, and the sense of purpose intoxicating. But beneath the excitement lay a darker truth. The Dockside Crew did not care about friendship, morality, or safety. They cared about control, loyalty, and profit. Liam began to see the cracks in the facade, the fear behind smiles, the quiet threats disguised as advice, and the constant tension that hummed through the streets. Every encounter, every decision, could alter his fate. Trust was fragile, fleeting, and often tested. As he became more involved, Liam realized that leaving the gang would not be simple. The streets were not forgiving, and the deeper he went, the harder it would be to escape. The city itself seemed to close in around him at night. Shadows grew longer, alleys narrower, and silence heavier. Liverpool's docks and neighborhoods felt alive in a way that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Liam understood that the Dockside Crew had given him more than a role. They had given him a life on the edge, a taste of power and fear that would haunt him forever. Every night he walked those streets, he carried the weight of choices he was only beginning to understand, a young life entwined with the ruthless rhythm of the city's gangs. The gangs of Liverpool operated in a world hidden in plain sight. To outsiders, the city appeared ordinary, full of streets lined with houses, shops, and pubs. But behind closed doors, the Dockside Crew and other gangs ran a silent empire. Abandoned warehouses, boarded-up houses, and even some occupied buildings became the centers of their operations. These were places where ordinary rules no longer applied, where law enforcement was only a distant concern, and where loyalty determined survival. Liam learned quickly that these hidden locations were more than just storage spaces. They were symbols of power. Inside the docks warehouses, the atmosphere was tense and charged. Stacks of crates and pallets hid shipments of drugs, stolen goods, and weapons. The air was thick with dust, dampness, and the faint smell of chemicals. Lights hung from the ceiling, flickering occasionally, casting shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Liam noticed the subtle rules immediately. Doors had to be checked twice, packages counted meticulously, and no one could enter or leave without permission. Each movement was observed, each action recorded in silent memory. Betrayal could come from anywhere. Another member, a neighbor, or even someone pretending to be a friend. The gangs were masters of secrecy. Operations were planned weeks in advance, with surveillance on rival territories, police movements, and even casual pedestrians. Inside, Liam discovered layers of security, hidden cameras, lookouts posted on rooftops, and coded messages that only insiders could understand. Even the most careful attempts at intrusion could go unnoticed until it was too late. Members communicated with brief gestures, subtle glances, and coded phrases, ensuring that outsiders never learned the truth. The city's residents were unaware that beneath the surface, a silent war of strategy, intimidation, and planning was taking place. Yet, even within this hidden world, fear and paranoia were constant companions. Members never fully trusted each other. Friends could betray friends in an instant, and loyalty was measured by action, not word. Liam observed the consequences of missteps, punishments carried out swiftly, often in ways that left no trace, serving as warnings to others. He realized that the Dockside Crew was not just a group of criminals. They were an organization with a hierarchy, rules, and a ruthless efficiency that ensured survival and dominance. Liam's nights became a mixture of adrenaline and dread. He moved through shadowed corridors, past stacked crates and locked doors, aware that every step mattered. The streets outside the warehouses seemed quiet, almost peaceful, but inside, tension built like a storm. He noticed how the older members carried themselves, calm, deliberate, always aware. Each had seen betrayal, violence, and death, and their composure was a weapon in itself. Liam began to understand that survival was about more than courage. It was about awareness, timing, and instinct. The more he witnessed, the more he realized how impossible it would be to escape this world. Liverpool's streets were a labyrinth of secrets, each corner hiding potential danger. The gang's control was invisible yet absolute, a force that shaped the lives of everyone in their territory. Liam felt both fear and fascination, drawn to the power and danger surrounding him. As he left the warehouse each night, walking into the dimly lit streets, he understood that the city had already claimed him, binding him to a life where shadows ruled and every choice carried weight. The The streets of Liverpool had always been dangerous, but now they felt like a battlefield. The tension between the Dockside Crew and the Mersey Wolves had reached a breaking point. Small skirmishes had escalated into full-scale turf wars, and the city itself seemed to tremble under the weight of their conflict. Alleyways, parking lots, and quiet residential streets became sites of sudden violence. Burned-out cars, shattered windows, and graffiti marking territory served as grim reminders that no corner of the city was truly safe. Residents began to feel the war in subtle ways at first. A group of young men loitering late at night, a shattered streetlight, where someone had been attacked, the hurried whispers of neighbors. But soon, the signs became impossible to ignore. Shots fired in the middle of the night, sirens wailing as police rushed to crime scenes, and the aftermath of gang confrontations left neighborhoods scarred. Families stayed indoors after sunset. Children were warned never to wander alone, and businesses shuttered early to avoid confrontations. The city had become a chessboard, each gang calculating moves, predicting rival actions, and striking when least expected. The Dockside Crew and the Mersey Wolves each had their own strategies. The crew, operating along the northern docks, relied on speed, intimidation, and precise planning. They struck quickly, then vanished into the labyrinth of warehouses and alleyways. The Wolves, controlling nightlife districts and key bars, used unpredictability and manipulation, targeting both rivals and unsuspecting civilians to send messages of fear. Every encounter was a calculated risk, every move designed to gain the upper hand. Both sides knew that one wrong decision could mean death, and loyalty was tested constantly. Amid the chaos, Liam witnessed the consequences of the silent war firsthand. He saw ordinary people caught in the crossfire, innocent victims of violence they could neither prevent nor escape. A shopkeeper's windows were smashed after refusing to pay protection money, a teenager was beaten in a deserted alley for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and cars were torched as warnings to rival gangs. These incidents were more than random acts of violence. They were messages, carefully orchestrated to control neighborhoods and instill fear. The gangs were not reckless. Every clash, every act of intimidation, was part of a larger strategy to dominate the city. Lookouts scanned streets for signs of rival movements. Informants fed critical intelligence, and contingency plans were in place for every scenario. The level of organization was shocking, revealing a ruthless efficiency hidden beneath the surface of chaos. Liam realized that the violence was not just spontaneous, it was deliberate, and survival required constant vigilance. Even as the streets quieted in the early hours of the morning, the threat remained. Shadows lingered in corners, and tension hung in the air like smoke. Liverpool's residents knew the gangs controlled the night, but few understood the depth of their reach. Every evening brought the possibility of violence, betrayal, and sudden danger. For Liam and others like him, the city was no longer a home. It was a dangerous arena where loyalty, instinct, and courage were the only shields against the inevitable chaos. The silent war raged on, shaping the lives of everyone who dared to walk Liverpool's streets after dark. Liam had begun to understand the fragile nature of life within the Dockside Crew, but nothing could have prepared him for the revelation of betrayal. One evening, as he carried out his usual errands through the darkened streets of Liverpool, he noticed subtle changes in the behavior of the older members. Glances that once felt protective now seemed calculating. Whispers that had once been friendly now carried an edge of caution. Fear, Liam realized, was spreading like a silent infection through the gang. The Dockside Crew was no longer just dealing with external threats. Their greatest danger was coming from within. It became clear that someone high in the ranks was feeding information to the Mersey Wolves. Every move the crew made seemed anticipated. Packages Liam delivered were intercepted. Ambushes were avoided before they could happen, and secrets he had been instructed to guard were being used against them. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Trust was no longer an option. Anyone could be a spy, anyone could turn on him in a moment, and every ally might conceal a knife behind their back. The air around the gang became charged with suspicion, tension crackling like electricity before a storm. Paranoia quickly replaced routine. Members began questioning each other at every turn. Loyalty tests became frequent, and even the simplest task was scrutinized for signs of disloyalty. Liam watched friendships crumble, observing how fear transformed once close companions into cautious strangers. Every encounter felt like a trap. Every word spoken carried double meaning, and silence became the safest choice. He realized that in this world, survival was not only about strength or courage, it was about reading people, predicting moves, and understanding the invisible currents of power. Liam's role in the gang became increasingly complicated. He had to navigate errands and operations while simultaneously watching for potential threats from within. He noticed the subtle signs: a shadow that lingered too long, a misdirected glance, a conversation cut off abruptly when he entered a room. Each observation could mean the difference between life and death. He became hyper-aware, constantly assessing not only his own actions, but also the intentions of those around him. Sleep brought little comfort. Dreams were filled with shadows and whispers, blending reality with the constant threat that had become his life. Despite the fear and uncertainty, Liam understood that he could not turn back. The streets of Liverpool had claimed him, and leaving the gang was no longer a simple decision. It was a risk that could cost him everything. He had to find a way to survive within the chaos, to navigate the treacherous currents of loyalty and betrayal without losing himself entirely. Every night became a careful balancing act, a game where one wrong move could bring ruin. The betrayal within the Dockside Crew transformed Liam's perception of the gang world. The enemy was no longer just the Mersey Wolves outside. It was the silent, invisible threat lurking within the very organization that had once promised protection. Liverpool's streets, already dangerous, became a labyrinth of suspicion, fear and strategy. Liam understood, with growing dread, that he was now part of a game with no rules, where survival depended on courage, cunning and the ability to trust no one at all. The night everything changed began quietly, almost deceptively calm. Liverpool's streets seemed like any other evening, the occasional hum of traffic and distant laughter drifting from pubs. But beneath the surface, tension had reached a boiling point. The Dockside Crew and the Mersey Wolves were on high alert, each anticipating a move from the other. Liam felt it in the air. The way shadows seemed to linger longer, the sudden hush in empty alleyways, the feeling that eyes were on him even when no one was visible. That night, the city itself seemed to hold its breath. Without warning, the streets erupted. A massive police operation descended on the docks, coordinated, precise, and overwhelming. Roadblocks appeared at key points, helicopters circled overhead, and sirens echoed through the night. The timing was perfect, almost surgical. Liam, in the middle of a routine task, suddenly found himself caught in chaos. Members of the Dockside Crew scrambled, shouting orders and trying to salvage what they could. The wolves reacted in kind, attempting to flee their territories, protect their caches, and avoid capture. Liverpool's Underworld, so carefully hidden until now, exploded into visible turmoil. Cars screeched around corners, some abandoned in haste, engines left running, doors swinging open. Alleyways became traps and escape routes simultaneously. Liam moved as quickly as possible, ducking behind dumpsters, slipping through narrow passages, and avoiding the flashing lights of police vehicles. He watched as older, more experienced gang members vanished into shadows, while others were hauled into waiting police vans. The streets were chaotic, violent, and unpredictable. Anyone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time could be injured or worse. Inside the warehouses, panic spread. Shipments that had been meticulously guarded for months were left exposed. Crates of drugs, cash and stolen goods were abandoned in the rush to escape. Liam witnessed colleagues he had once trusted being arrested, their faces etched with disbelief, anger and fear. The Dockside Crew's carefully constructed empire began to crumble in front of him, the foundations of power disintegrating under the relentless pressure of law enforcement. For Liam, survival became the only focus. He knew the police were not his only threat. The wolves and even some crew members could see an opportunity to eliminate weak links in the chaos. Every step required calculation, every decision could mean life or death. The adrenaline surged, sharpening his senses, making him hyper-aware of every movement, every sound. Shadows became potential threats, corners hiding danger. It was a night where instinct mattered more than courage, where hesitation could be fatal. By the time dawn approached, the streets were littered with the aftermath. Abandoned vehicles, broken bottles, shattered windows, and the silence of a city exhausted by violence. Some gang members were caught, some disappeared, and a few, like Liam, survived by luck, speed and caution. The Dockside Crew had been shattered, the Wolves disrupted, and Liverpool itself had witnessed a turning point. The city would never be the same, and neither would Liam. He realized that his life, entwined with the gangs, had changed forever. The night had exposed the fragility of power, the unpredictability of loyalty, and the raw, unrelenting danger that had always lurked in Liverpool's shadows. The streets of Liverpool gradually returned to a fragile calm, but the city had been forever changed. The chaos of the previous night lingered in the minds of residents and gang members alike. Burned-out cars, shattered windows, and abandoned warehouses were visible reminders of a war that had erupted quietly for months and then exploded violently. Families ventured outside cautiously, the city holding its breath as if testing whether the violence had truly ended. But beneath this uneasy calm, the remnants of power, fear, and loyalty still thrived, invisible to the casual observer. For Liam, the aftermath was a mixture of relief, confusion, and fear. He had survived, narrowly avoiding capture and violence, but he knew the streets were no longer safe. The Dockside Crew had been fractured, its leadership compromised, and the Mersey Wolves had retreated to lick their own wounds. Even those who remained free were haunted by the events of that night. Liam realized that survival in Liverpool's underworld was never guaranteed. It was only temporary, a brief reprieve in a city where danger lurked around every corner. The gangs that had once ruled with near absolute control were now weakened, but their presence persisted. New leaders quietly emerged, filling the void left by arrests and disappearances. Power shifted silently, alliances were formed and broken, and the streets adapted to a new balance of fear. For the residents, the city seemed quieter, yet the tension was palpable, an invisible current beneath the everyday hustle and bustle. The docks, the alleyways, and the nightlife districts remained territories where loyalty was tested and betrayal was never far away. Liverpool had learned a hard lesson. Even when chaos subsides, the shadows never fully disappear. Liam made the difficult decision to leave the city. The streets that had once seemed familiar now felt suffocating, each corner a reminder of danger and betrayal. He packed his few belongings, carrying with him the memories of violence, fear, and survival. Every step away from Liverpool was heavy with reflection. The city had shaped him, taught him lessons in trust, loyalty, and the harsh realities of life on the edge. Yet he also knew that leaving did not erase the past. The experiences, the fear, and the adrenaline that had defined his nights would remain with him forever, etched into his memory like scars. Despite his departure, the gangs remained, waiting for opportunities to reclaim power or assert dominance. New recruits would inevitably be drawn into their world, seduced by promises of respect, money, or protection. Liverpool's streets would continue to pulse with hidden activity, a city alive in ways most people never see. Liam understood that while he had escaped physically, the city's influence lingered in his mind, a reminder of the dangerous dance between power and fear. In the quiet moments after leaving, Liam reflected on what he had witnessed. The Dockside Crew and the Mersey Wolves were more than gangs. They were forces that shaped lives, neighborhoods, and the city itself. Their control was subtle, yet absolute, their influence woven into the very fabric of Liverpool. As the sun rose on a city that appeared ordinary, Liam knew the truth. The streets had survived the night, but they would never be free of the darkness that had claimed them long ago. Liverpool's night would always belong to those who ruled from the shadows, and the stories of its streets would continue, unseen but unforgettable.